can see it just fine. That's good.
Especially you.
All right, hang on. All right, are we doing better now? Okay, I'm going to try to run through this. All right, I want to just kind of give a little bit of background. I'm not going to go into a huge, great discussion on this, but I just want to go into a little bit of background. So we're going to talk about, are they local? Okay, here is what exactly are the Common Core State Standards. They're just a set of standards that kids should be, which kind of pegs where kids should be in various stages of development. So that's really just, we had past standards before that, so this is just a different type of standards, different from our original past, okay? Now here's the thing that I want you to see, and a little blurry. On the Common Core State Standards website, which is up in the top, you'll see that there's a public license. And it's very interesting when you look at it. It's licensed and copyrighted by the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers. So that's not really here in Oklahoma. Also, too, I've always found it kind of interesting. They provide a liability waiver. So if you don't like the standards, then, you know, too bad for you. This is what you get, and this is what we're offering. There's a liability waiver for that. But if you decide that you've been harmed by some way in these standards, you will have to go to Washington, D.C. in order to sue them for redress. So that's kind of interesting. Obviously, we're not in Washington, D.C. All right, this is kind of our roadmap to the Common Core that we've developed, and it really encompasses what I like to call the 4 pillars of education reform, which are the Common Core State Standards, the State Longitudinal Database, a program called Turnaround, which was started by Bill Gates in Chicago when Arnie Duncan was the superintendent there, and teacher accountability, all of the teacher accountability measures that we're doing right now. Also, too, it's very important to realize that these particular 4 pillars were pushed forward by the government, the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education, and we accepted those when we got state fiscal stabilization funds, which was from the ERA money. That was part of that when we accepted those funds, and all 50 states did that. We also applied for Race to the Top grant. We did not get that money, but we do have a No Child Left Behind waiver, and those 4 pillars are also part and parcel of that waiver. This is kind of how they fit together. The blue is the turnaround and the Common Core. The yellow is the teacher accountability. Red represents money. It's our blood. And green is the data that encompasses the whole amount there. All right, now, what are the origins of Common Core? Are they local? Well, we like to hear state-led a lot of the times, that the Common Core State Standards were a state-led effort. Well, that's actually a coined term that was used by the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers, kind of as a way to indicate, make you think that they were done on a local level, even though they were not. Okay, here's kind of some background on the standards so that you know. In 1996, there was an education summit that was held in Palisades, New York, and it was actually sponsored by IBM's CEO, Louis Gerstner, and Wisconsin Governor Tommy Thompson. And the reason why they did this is because they wanted to talk about and act on education standards. So at that meeting, there were about 43 governors, plus the CEOs of AT&T, Bell South, Kodak, P&G, and Boeing. And I found a really interesting kind of a first-hand account of that meeting. It was written by a man from the Heritage Foundation named Dennis P. Doyle. And here's one of the things that he says. The communique produced by the summit was reasonably clear about the next step: the creation by the governors of a national, not federal, clearinghouse, or a war room, as Governor Thompson called it, that would be going full bore within 2 years, designed to serve the states. It would keep everyone up to date on the standards, but its more important function would be to set the stage for meaningful comparisons among the states. Be that as it may, the most important point of view not represented at this summit, except in a brief reference by Lynn Cheney, was old-fashioned localism, or, as it's characterized in education circles, local control. That governors and CEOs would not be naturally drawn to this point of view is no surprise. Modern CEOs are just as likely to think in global as local terms, and governors, by virtue of their jobs, think in statewide terms. So this is not to say that either is opposed to local control, just that the terms of the discussion were cast as state level concerns. So you can see all the way back at the very beginning of this whole standards initiative, this was done basically on kind of a national level. All right, here is the website for Achieve. This is I tried to deal in screenshots as much as I can. Achieve is the war room. That's what it became, was the war room that was conceived of. It's important to understand that Achieve is a private organization centered in Washington, D.C. If it's a private organization, there are no open records that you can get from its meetings, and you're not represented as a taxpayer. So it's important to remember that. Also, too, just kind of as an aside, because you'll hear about this every once in a while, not in this presentation, but Achieve was the one that created the American Diploma Project, and they're the ones that are now helping to change the SAT. Is the SAT? SAT. All right. Here's a little part of Achieve is very proud of their history, and so I got all of this off of Achieve's websites, and I've got the little boxes that are pointed out there. In 2006, Achieve releases a report called Closing the Expectations Gap. It was an annual 50-state progress report on the alignment of high school policies with the demands of college and work. So that sounds very similar to what we're doing right now, which are college and career-ready expectations. In 2009, Achieve partnered with the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers on this initiative to begin these standards, these Common Core State Standards. It's important to remember, just like I talked about with Achieve, that the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers are private organizations. The NGA actually gets taxpayer money when the governors join. Some of those funds are used from taxpayer funds, but for the most part, it's all private funding, and there is no representation other than your governor or when the governor sends a representative in their place to these meetings. All right, this man is David Coleman. David Coleman, and this is his actual CV, a part of it that's found online. He is happy to tell you that he played a lead role in developing the Common Core in math and in the literacy. He founded a group called Student Achievement Partners that was hired student achievement partners to write the standards. Then when the standards were finished, they gave them to the Council of Chief State School Officers and the National Governors Association to send out to the states for use. There is actually a video of Coleman online where he actually discusses how he kind of duped Republican legislators into accepting these Common Core State Standards. It's important, I think, to know that at the bottom of this little information here, he talks about spending 5 years in healthcare, in financial institutions, and then he did some pro bono work in education. So, doesn't sound like he's an educator, yet he's happy to say that he was a big part of writing these standards. Here's a curriculum vitae from our highest paid employee at the department that I know of so far. His name is John Freeman. He is the Executive Director for Student Information, and in his CV alone, basically he says that as early as 2004, he is at Achieve working on college and career-ready standards. Well, I guess he was at the American Diploma Project in 2004, but he's also been with Achieve, and you can see that on there as well. So these were not something that was just happened spontaneously in 2010 in Oklahoma. There's been a very long series of development at a national level for these standards. Here is a screenshot of ed.gov that shows the Race to the Top grant. It shows the 4 pillars that you had to accept and put into law in order to get a Race to the Top grant, or at least be considered for the grant itself. This was a $4 billion project. Most of those came from, I guess you'd have to say most of that money came from ERA funds. In Oklahoma, Senate Bill 2033 contained a whole lot of the education reform bills that prop up those 4 pillars, and we put them in law. Governor Henry actually signed an addendum to the Race to the Top application and put all of the Common Core State Standards in law by executive order in 2010, and that was not just English and language arts and math, but it was also social studies and science as well in the event that those were developed. So we've had those in law by executive order since the very beginning. That's on our State Department of Education website, and you can find that in school law. And a question here would be, if Common Core or local, why is it so much that national and international big money is going into these things to get these adopted in various states? So as early as 2009, the Bill Gates Foundation was giving money to put together college career-ready standards to the tune of $35 million, at least just what was on this page when I went to their website. Also, too, you can go, Bill and Melinda Gates have a very open website. All you have to do is just type in, at the very top, you see where I typed in CCSO, and you just hit the little magnifying glass, and it takes you right to wherever, whatever company you think or organization you think Bill Gates might be funding. It's a very open website and very easy to find. So this was, they actually had 2 full pages of money that they've given to Council of Chief State School Officers for college-ready programming, and that was $28 million on this page alone. So that's not going to Oklahoma, that's going to the Council of Chief State School Officers. The NGA was also given money by the Gates Foundation for college-ready standards in 2011 to the tune of nearly $1.6 million, and Gates has given millions more in global policy and advocacy. It's important to point out that our governor is currently the chair of the National Governors Association, and she is absolutely, without a doubt, interested in making sure that Oklahoma follows the Common Core. All right, in 2012, GE even gave Student Achievement Partners, who I just told you wrote the standards, $13 million to help focus on helping teachers understand the shifts in education necessary for the new standards. And they said that they would also build a storehouse of free resources for them to use. So that's, again, that's not Oklahoma, that's GE. Also, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have given Stanford children millions of dollars, and I was not able to get onto the internet today, so I didn't have the exact figure, but I wanted to say it was somewhere in the $1.6 million. Okay, I haven't looked, so that's quite a big chunk. Yeah, and all of us have gotten our little post. Have you guys been getting the postcards in the mail from Stanford children? Yes, that tells about they've had a very large campaign right now. Okay, I think this is a very interesting comment. This was Tommy Thompson, who was this was a 1999 Education Summit, not even the one in 1996. And Tommy Thompson gets up and in his closing speech for the day, he says that today it's all about the 3 A's, not the 3 R's, accountability, achievement, and alignment. That's great and all, but I think our students aren't worried about any of those 3 things. They're more worried about the actual 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. So that was very concerning. I also wanted to take a few minutes to go over, because we've heard our state superintendent talk a lot about the Oklahoma academic standards. And so, do we have Common Core, or what do we have? Do we have the Oklahoma academic standards? So I took what you'll see on here are screenshots from the Oklahoma State Department of Education website, and you'll see that up in the top of most of them you can see where the URLs are listed, and if they haven't been, I've written them down so you can go find these. There is an umbrella here, and it says Oklahoma Academic Standards, and it covers all of these parts. And then it says English and Mathematics. Oklahoma State Board of Education adopted Common Core State Standards for grades K through 12 in June 2010. Social Studies. Oklahoma State Board of Education adopted revised Oklahoma content standards for social studies and history in 2012 for pre-K to include the Common Core State Standards reading and writing skills. Science is currently undergoing revision, but there's the plan to include the Common Core State Standards reading and writing skills. Okay, here is the page that says Oklahoma Academic Standards on the State Department of Education website, and it says for English Language Arts, the Oklahoma State Board of Education adopted Common Core State Standards, just like I said, When you click on that link there where it says Oklahoma Standards Download, it takes you directly to the Common Core State Standards for English Language Arts and Literacy in History, Social Studies, Science, and Technical subjects. So that's where that link actually goes. This is just more, I've had to take a number of screenshots and kind of paste them together so we don't just go through endless screenshots. And this is one from the Oklahoma Academic Standards on the English Language Arts. You'll see at the top, it says that the standards were not written or funded by the federal government and that Oklahoma educators and content specialists participated in the writing of the Oklahoma Academic Standards. And then you'll notice that it has here http://www.corestandards.org resources, and when you go to that link, it says Common Core frequently asked questions. So Oklahoma Standards, Common Core Standards, it's apparently Common Core Standards, just renamed. So when you also go down and you hit the links for the teaching channel, they're basically these are all about Common Core lessons. When you go to the Council of Great City Schools, they have also been given a grant to make sure that people are interested and invested in using the Common Core State Standards, and it says that on there. When you go to the math page in the Oklahoma Academic Standards for Math and the link there, you'll notice that it says the same thing, that they adopted Common Core State Standards for grades K through 12 in June 2012. And when you hit the Academic Standards button, then the Common Core State Standards for Mathematics comes up. And the same thing with the Great City Schools and the teaching channel. So it's just the same thing for math as it was for English Language Arts. When you look at the Oklahoma Academic Standards for Social Studies, it's kind of interesting. This particular says the revisions for the Social Studies and History and Standards in 2012 included the Common Core State Standards for speaking and listening, reading and writing for pre-kindergarten through grade 5, and then additionally the Common Core State Literacy Standards for History, Social Studies for grades 6 through 12 were integrated into the secondary portion of the content standards. And if you click the link where it says beginning 2012, and I've kind of drawn a little arrow there. It goes to the social studies, the standards themselves. The other one on the to the right of that is the implementation guide. And inside it says the CCS for reading and writing grades will be used. And so it again, that's on these websites, and you can find that yourself. Here is the National Centers for Social Studies, and this is their one of their major pages, and it talks about a state-led effort to develop standards in social studies. And it talks about being a collaborative with the Council of Chief State School Officers, and I think we've already talked about the fact that they were intimately involved in the Common Core State Standards. And it basically says that the ultimate goal is to produce a set of fewer, higher, clearer standards that prepare all students for college, career, and citizenship, which is basically what they say about the Common Core State Standards. Also, if you'll look on the right, I've just put, the that screenshot back up about the Common Core, because they basically say the same thing on the Common Core website that the NCSS says. Well, why would I even bring that up when we have Oklahoma standards? So why would I bring that up? Well, when you look in the implementation guide, and on the left, so I've compared these left to right, on the left, you'll see the implementation guide for the Oklahoma C3 Standards for Social Studies under Civics and Government. And on the right, you'll see the College, Career, and Civic Life C3 framework for the National Social Studies Standards. And you'll notice that on the left side, under Civics and Government, we are told in our Oklahoma State Standards that we are going to teach children about the principles of American constitutional democracy. Not sure that you're aware, but there is no such term as constitutional democracy. We live in a republic. It's not the same thing as a democracy, and they're really, when I talked to a history person about what a constitutional democracy might be, they had no clue how they could even reconcile that. So that was kind of an interesting thing. But then when you go to the National Social Studies Standards, you'll notice, here's the screenshot, you can see where it's taken right directly off of the NCSS website. And it says, in a constitutional democracy, productive civic engagement requires knowledge of history, principles, and foundations of our American democracy. So, it's interesting that they would be that parallel. At least that was of interest to me. Then you'll see on the left and you'll see on the right again the National Centers for Social Studies, and then on the right we have the Oklahoma Academic Social Studies Standards. And you'll notice that the national ones are called College Career and Civic Life, or C3. Ours are called College Career and Citizen Ready, or C3 standards. And then you'll also notice on the left, and it's kind of hard to see because I had to squeeze them all down and get in here so we weren't spending endless hours looking at pictures. But you will notice that on the left as well as on the right, both of these standards are basically concerned with 4 areas, and that would be civics, economics, geography, and history. And when I looked at the addendum that Governor Henry had signed, instituting all of the Common Core state standards in state law, it was very specific. I'm not sure exactly why, but his document was very specific about what was to be found in these social studies standards. And when you go back and you look at that document, they match up with just basically exactly what's in the standards. I also found it interesting too that the national standards predicate themselves on something that's called an inquiry arc. And it's basically an all-encompassing way of studying social studies, and you inquire, and there's a whole method to how you do this. And then in Oklahoma, we have something called the coherency storyline, which essentially does the same thing, it just has a different name. So in conclusion, the Common Core state standards are not local, and they were not locally conceived. The Oklahoma Academic Standards still include Common Core state standards for social studies, Common Core state standards, and social studies standards were very clearly patterned after the National Social Studies Standards. These particular set of standards remove local control because the accountability for the standards really are at the level of the federal government due to the fact that we've taken the NCLB waiver and we put so much of this stuff in law in order to get a raise to the top grant. So we're in a situation now where we have created an unfunded mandate to states that did not get a raise to the top grant because the No Child Left Behind waiver does not produce any funds itself. It just allows us to escape the very onerous and silly idea that all children would be completely proficient in math and English by 2014. I can't even get my 8-year-old to put his shirt on right every morning. So I've always found that to be quite the interesting ideal. I guess you think about that riding on your unicorn over the rainbow to the pot of gold. So that was absolutely silly, and so that's why we got a No Child Left Behind waiver. But we have read the waiver. I've read it. I read it again just the other day as I was preparing this, and it's very specific and outlines in a very specific way what Oklahoma is supposed to be doing with our education reforms. The Oklahoma PASS skills that we had prior to the Common Core state standards were actually graded by the Fordham Institute, which is a Common Core state standards proponent, as being better in several areas even than the Common Core was, and certainly on a similar level. The state longitudinal database that's a part of those 4 pillars of education reform that I talked to you about is very intrusive, and it really is a large threat to student privacy. And it's interesting that we have a really good YouTube video of a man who produces computer software that allows teachers to be able to track students as they move through their educational duties all across the years, actually. And he talks about the fact that there's no way that they would be able to produce such a great and powerful, all-encompassing piece of software if it were not for the Common Core, and that the Common Core really is kind of the glue that holds all of that together, because you have to be able to collect individual student data and then be able to map that in order to decide whether your child's going to be able to graduate from high school, whether they're going to be able to go to college, or whether they're going to be able to have a job. The CCS are unfortunately not developmentally appropriate in a lot of areas, particularly in the lower grades, particularly in math. So basically, we obviously are not Common Core proponents. We would like to see them done away with. It seems very easy for us. We don't understand what the issue is, why we can't just repeal it from state law, and then if districts want to use it, and the people in their districts decide they want to use it, and their school board wants to use it, that's more power to you. If you spend all that money and that's what you want to do. But to keep it in state law, where it's an unfunded mandate, forcing schools to use it where parents don't want it, nor do teachers or administrators, then that really is a very large problem. There are a growing number of states that are attempting to reject the Common Core state standards. Indiana was actually the first one to kind of cut the thing off at the knees and to go a different direction. And it's our belief that Oklahoma should as well. So, do we want to take questions now, or would you like to wait until the end?
Yeah.
I defer to you.
Let's go and wait till the end.
Okay. Absolutely. Let me shut this
I
off.
did want to make one thing clear that, yes, our governor, Republican governor, and Republican state superintendent is supporting this, but our own Carolyn McCarty is our national committee on the Republican Party. She submitted a resolution against the Common Core standards, which the RNC did adopt, so it's very divided in both parties. And around here, I get a lot of the opposition to it, and it's very difficult for me to find someone to kind of speak in support of it. So I very much appreciate Joel Robison, Chief of Staff of Jenni, Barresi. I appreciate him coming up and asking for me. We can learn a lot as much as we can tonight.
Thank you very much for allowing me to come down. Thanks for the invitation. Sorry I was a little bit late getting here. Directions aren't my strong suit. I've had the opportunity to see Ms. White's presentation several times, and many of the facts I have no argument with. I think we just view things differently. The Common Core state standards were developed by the National Governors Association at the request of many interested parties, including business. If you think back to the 1980s, those of you who are old enough to remember back there, the first report that came out about education and the troubles that American education was having was called a report called A Nation at Risk. And it was put out during President Reagan's time, and it kind of started a national discussion about our schools and how we were doing and that sort of thing. And it continued through the 90s. And then during the decade of 2000, 2010, I think things kind of came together in so much as, particularly in Oklahoma, that's what I know most about, is what's happened here in Oklahoma. People, citizens, business folks in Oklahoma started being concerned when they were reading one thing about Oklahoma students' achievement and then seeing evidence that that might not necessarily be the truth. That Oklahoma students, according to the state leadership at that point in time, were scoring very well on our tests, our state assessments. Very high proficiency ranks for reading and math. And it was, everything was good. But then we started seeing some other kind of conflicting groups of evidence. I don't know how many of you have had students that have attended state universities and may have had to, before they could start doing credit-bearing courses, they'd have to go take remedial courses at college before they could get going, before they could, just to get them up to college level. So they would graduate high school, they'd go to college, and then they'd still have to go through these remediation classes before they were ready for college work, costing the students and their parents thousands of dollars in many cases. There's a national test that's given. It's called NAEP, It's just a sampling of students. Not all students take it, but a sampling of students in all states take it. And it showed dramatically different results from what we had been hearing about our state assessments. Where our state assessments were saying 70 to 80% of our students were proficient in reading and math, the NAEP tests were telling us compared to in non-national standards, it was 30 to 35% of our students were proficient. So, you know, what was the reality here? And I think all of us have an interest in our students being prepared to be successful in life, no matter what their chosen path is, whether it be to get a job directly out of high school, go to a career tech, go to a community college, go to a university. Well, I think our goal should be is that every student that leaves an Oklahoma high school should have the tools that that's needed to make whatever choice they want to make. That's what school ought to be for, is preparing you for options, to give you options in life, so that when you get out, you're prepared to go whichever way you want to go. It was determined that we weren't where we needed to be. We needed stronger standards. We needed more rigorous curriculum and all those sorts of things. So, as Ms. White mentioned, Senate Bill 2033 was passed that required us to participate in Common Core for reading, language arts, and math. The state adopted that. That was passed. Went to the state board. The state board adopted it. So that became part of the Oklahoma Academic Standards. And since then, as Ms. White mentioned, we've developed social studies standards here in Oklahoma. Or in the arts, the art standards were just about to go through the process of getting approved this year. Science will be next year. But the thread that runs through all of these is one of the things that the new academic standards wants students to be able to do to improve what we've been doing is to be able to write and to think. We think those are the two skills that you need no matter what you decide you want to do. You need to be able to write and you need to think on your feet. So throughout whatever, whether it be social studies, whether it be English, whether it be science, there's going to be a lot more writing involved. When students take assessments, it's not going to be bubbling in the little A, B's, and C's anymore. It's going to be writing. It's going to be showing their work on math problems. It's going to be much more rigorous tests. What the hope or what the thought of the Oklahoma Academic Standards are, and if you have teachers in your family, I'm sure you've heard this before, is our old standards used to be what they always say, a mile wide and an inch deep. Teachers would have to blow through those, the standard, their coursework every day run as fast as they could to get through it, because they knew the test was going to be at the end of the year and they had to get through all this stuff before they got to the test. And they never had a chance to really teach. You hear teachers' frustration, I can't teach anymore. It's all about taking the test. That's what we're trying to get away from with the Oklahoma Academic Standards. What the Oklahoma Academic Standards is a much more compact number, but it allows teachers and students to go much deeper into the process, into the things. It will give teachers the ability to stop, slow down, have a project during the year. We used to make maps and pyramids and all, and we've kind of gone away from that now because you've got to go through the book. This will enable us to go back and get kids more involved. Obviously, Superintendent Barresi, I'm representing her this evening, is a strong proponent of Oklahoma academic standards. She believes that our current rigor, or I know that's kind of an education term, the difficulty of what we're teaching our students isn't at a very high level. We're not asking them to jump over a very high bar, that we need to gradually raise that over time in all subjects. We need to give our students the chance to show their work, to write on assessments, and we're going to start doing that. So I think this is a transformation of education. It's difficult. No one has told us to do this other than the state legislature. I mean, nobody from outside Oklahoma. This is something Oklahomans have decided they want to do. We look forward to, as we move through it, we are getting strong support from school clubs. Prior to, I'm going to throw another acronym at you here, so the assessment, the national assessment that was going to be used to assess the new standards was called PARC. There's two of them, PARC and Smarter Balance, I think are the two. We were part of PARC. We decided to get out of PARC for three reasons. Superintendent enunciated them. The first one was that the PARC assessment was going to require students to basically be engaged in testing about twice as long as they are now. And we think that's just too long. That it was going to cost a few $million more than we're already spending, and we're already spending plenty on assessments. And lastly, it would require a level of technology availability that we currently don't have in school districts and at the state of Oklahoma. We're not there yet. So to try to push this square peg through this round hole that we currently have, we weren't going to be successful. I think we got kind of a little sign of what could be, what could have happened if we would have stayed with PARC with all the testing issues we had this past year. So we're not with the national assessment. We have adopted the Common Core in English, Language Arts, and Math, but we're developing standards here in Oklahoma in all the other subjects. I think I'm going to stop and take questions if that's okay.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I have a few questions, but I'll hope that first. Yeah.
We did point, counterpoint here.
What do you think about the constitutional democracy? I hadn't heard that one.
I'm about to embarrass myself here. I don't necessarily see what maybe Ms. White should answer that question first, because I'm not quite sure I understand what the issue is.
Well, democracies tend to fall under the weight of its own tyrannical, what ends up becoming a tyrannical regime. You can look at all of the big Pol Pot comes to mind. We're not in.
But I don't think.
Well,
let me
finish.
Cambodia was a democracy.
What I'm just saying, we don't have a democracy here in America. America is not a democracy. It was, we have three branches of government. We're a republic. We're based on laws, not on mob rule, which really is what democracy is. So it's it's not a small issue. It's an absolutely enormous issue, and I think it probably might frustrate more than just me to think that that's not a big issue with you.
Well, I think what both the standards that you presented there, I mean, the idea is to prepare students for citizenship, and obviously as part of living in a democracy is to do the things that good citizens do. Follow the rules, follow the laws, go vote, stay abreast of issues and those sorts of things. So I think that was what they were trying to express there.
What would be wrong with repealing, in your opinion, and just allowing the choice?
From my perspective, standards, standards to me are kind of like the outline of a house. It's what's kind of the basic outline. How you flesh that house out is this curriculum, is the textbooks, is the teacher lesson plans, is the teacher presentations. So the answer, I think, from the state, we have an interest, I think the state, all of us collectively in the state, not just the state government, but all of us collectively, we should have an interest in ensuring that every child, no matter where they live, whether they live in Ardmore, or they live in Balco, or they live in Medill, that all the students receive a good quality education. And if you don't have that kind of state framework of standards, I don't know if you could ensure that.
So the fear might be that some local schools, back in the country might not do as well as some others, so you want.
Once again,
They might willy-nilly teach something that the state doesn't approve of.
Well, I don't think approve of is like I say, once again, from the state's perspective, and once again, when I say the state, I'm talking about all of us here in the room and outside the room, I think there should be an interest in every child in the state. Every child in the state of Oklahoma should have access to a quality education. And by setting some state standards, we think that moves us along that path.
What is your idea of a solution if this is repealed for this?
Well, we
dilemma?
actually still have passed, I mean, they're still on the website, because right now what we're doing is we're supposedly bridging from past to the the Oklahoma Academic Standards. We're supposed to be bridging over to that until 2014, at which point we're supposed to be all underneath Common Core. So you still have the path on some of them that you can see on the website. There's no, like I said, there was nothing wrong that with those particular standards, and I do kind of want to set one thing kind of straight, and some of you superintendents might be able to help me on this. No Child Left Behind was really very onerous, like I said. I mean, you had to have these numbers. Well, there's a lot of Title I funding money that schools get, and so if you weren't making these numbers according to No Child Left Behind, you could legitimately lose some of your funding. So how would you, I mean, isn't it conceptually kind of understandable that maybe a superintendent would lower the cut scores on the test to try to make it seem like we were doing better? Well, I think that's what Sandy Garrett actually they found out, that she was lowering the cut scores on the test, which meant it took less of a number to make a higher score. So it took less, maybe an A was an 83. Okay, you can kind of understand that. So here's my way of fitting this together. If we had passed, and we had the opportunity for Common Core, and we kept the cut scores at a reasonable level, so teachers were really having to teach to make sure that all of the teaching was getting done so that the states could pass the test, that it seems like that would have solved all of the issue without even ever bringing any of this in. So there's no reason that we couldn't do that.
I was just going to, it seems like you don't really have a problem with state standards.
Yeah.
You just have a problem with these particular standards.
Absolutely.
The same standards as the other state has.
Right.
Here, off the board.
Common.
Don't we
But
wanna
I mean, setting a framework of standards for all schools in the state doesn't seem to be your objection.
No,
Okay.
because
All right.
inside the state, taxpayers are able to make decisions at that level. But when you're dealing with something outside of the state, I mean, who are you gonna, it's like Ghostbusters, who are you gonna call? You gonna call a chief, you gonna go to Washington DC and
A lot of
knock on a
folks call
chief's
me,
door?
but.
Well,
But you can't fix anything
Yeah.
if it's in law.
Yeah.
And one of my fears, I can see that how Common Core, a lot of the stuff could be good and used if the local school board was picking out the things they want. But the thing that I fear, as far as it coming down from the federal level or states in conjunction with the federal level, is that you have socialism beginning to be incorporated into the teachings, and as well as the changing of our history.
Well, I would argue with you that all that curriculum, textbooks you adopt, all that sort of thing is handled at the local school board level. And if that's a concern of yours, which I'm not saying it's not a legitimate concern, is you have a redress at your local school board that you can take care of that. That will not be pushed down from the state onto someone.
Not really. Not really. In principle, that sounds really good. The problem is that textbook publishers are locked into publishing books that will go to the largest states and to the largest school districts. So that literally, and I think Texas is what I've always heard is the state that pretty much controls that, which is maybe pretty good for those of us who consider it a conservative point of view. However, when you look at the textbooks that are being published, they aren't changing our history, they aren't being accurate, and local school boards don't have a variety of competitive textbooks to choose from. They have only what's available out there in the world.
Well, I share your
So in theory,
concern.
your point is fine, but in reality, it doesn't work.
I share your concerns about the textbooks. You're right. Textbook companies, they're in the business to sell books. So if they can sell 100,000 books to Texas as opposed to 30,000 books to Oklahoma, they're probably going to do what they do to make the money, and that's fine. One of the things that we're going to be exploring this next legislative session, we've already had some talks with folks at the legislature and at the governor's office about, is the Oklahoma Constitution has it's very robust. There's lots of things in the Oklahoma Constitution, and one of the things that's in the Constitution is this textbook committee that's set up and how it works and all that good kind of stuff. And I'm not quite sure in this day and age of all the information that's available through all different sources, why we necessarily have to be so beholden to textbook companies. So that is probably going to be something we look at moving forward. But I do share your concern about the textbook.
And if I could just kind of piggyback on that, I am now homeschooled. I teach my kids at home. Obviously, one of the reasons I took them out of school was kind of the fallout from Common Core, and I'll explain that later if anybody's interested. But our concern, we like the mile wide, inch deep curriculum because that's a classical education, is knowing a whole lot about everything. When you learn a little bit about a lot, which is the inverse of what he's talking about, there are large sections of the world, just in terms of philosophy even, that you don't have a chance to get. Well, homeschool students, and a lot of us who are homeschoolers use books that are classically modeled books. And we're having a very hard time now finding books because of the Common Core state standards push, because of just what you articulated about the textbooks. When you have little bitty textbook companies that are the ones that are producing these, great classical books with lots of information in it, so kids can have a broad, just like our founders did, that's the same kind of education that they had. When they, those booksellers tend to be smaller, and they're getting run out of the markets by these big book companies that are coming in who have to put their stamps on things. So that's another real huge thing that we need to bring up here, is that it's not just affecting public school students, it's also affecting the way anybody, private schools, school choice here in Oklahoma, because what school choice, if your curriculum is modeled after the same standards at this school and this school and this school and this school, which is not necessarily the case or didn't have to be before. So I wanted to just point out about the homeschool part.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't want to monopolize this thing. I think we have Ms. White just brought up kind of a fundamental view, a difference in views. And I think this is what we should discuss. I think you advocated for the mile-wide HD, as that would be a preferable, a more broad, full, robust curriculum.
Thank you, I like that better.
Okay. Okay. I guess what I would argue is that once again, times are a-changing. Jobs are changing. Our lives are changing. What our students are going to need to know moving forward, it has a lot more to do with their critical thinking skills, their ability to find information, their ability to create new things. That's what the jobs are going to be asking them to do. Their jobs may not be asking them, the facts as much as their ability to find the facts. Can these students, when they get on the job and their boss gives them a project, here, do it, see you in a week, are they going to have the skills needed to be able to define, to think about this project, to determine what the scope of it is, what's the avenues to find the answers, to go get those answers, and to put the answers together in a coherent manner to present to their boss? I think that this new curriculum, these new standards, this new approach of shrinking things, going deeper, allowing more time for writing, critical thinking, that's the best way to prepare students in the future. If we stay with the mile-wide or the more robust curriculum, that is not the best way to serve these students.
One of the things that I do like about getting older, because it's not what's happening to my body, I reject that completely, but I do like what's going on in my head. And I think that as I hit the over 50 mark, I realize, looking back, that I know I'm okay with this part, and I know a lot more than I used to know, and therefore, because I know so much more, I'm able to discuss things with people who might be from different countries, or who have different ideas, or I can even, talk to people who have different jobs and be able to relate to that. Well, why? Because I have a large body of knowledge that's crammed in there. If I knew 3 or 4 things, it would be very hard for me to find common ground or to be able to think about things that I could talk to with other people. So I think it sounds really well and good when you talk about it. And I remember as a teacher, I was one of the ones that was flying through trying to make sure that we got everything in there. But I know that those students that I had, even today, still remember parts of what we learned that they can build on for later on. So it's having a much broader plane of knowledge is much easier to find ways to critically think about and to find common ground with other people. It's much better to have a larger amount of knowledge than a smaller depth of knowledge. I think absolutely.
Yes, I wanted to say something about the term constitutional democracy. Since it is incorrect, it might be an example of the elitism that is running through this country, trying to change our constitution into more of a socialistic. So if we lose local control, we can't keep ourselves in a republic based on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to, real quick, quick and dirty, a republic and a democracy. A democracy can vote in or out anything. They don't like free speech, vote it out. You don't like populists having guns, take them away. A republic guarantees we the people certain freedoms and certain rights which cannot be removed by a democracy. What bothers me is I don't like this creeping democracy idea. Another thing I want to throw out real quick, just to really mess up things even more, is I'm a graduate professor. I taught in graduate school and I taught in undergraduate school. We have no standards, none, zero. Nobody tells us. You would think then that nothing but idiots would come out of a college, when in fact we have, I think, our higher education is one of the best higher educations in the world. Also, I'm a PhD researcher. And I tell you, with what you're going to do with the Common Core, is you're going to get reams and reams and just computers full of crappy, worthless data, which will not be relevant to a damn thing. I would really see what makes the universities and the colleges work is that every single professor is committed to teaching those students what they know and what they think, and I want them to get out and do research in libraries. They will learn how to think, they will learn how to do research, they will learn how to find things, and nobody checks and looks over my shoulder because we value academic freedom. This creeping hand of control into the teachers is an idiocy that I've seen in our secondary education system, which I think is frankly pretty damn dumb.
I've developed my statement here because I get to speak later about my campaign, but you're very articulate. So the only other person most articulate as you about this subject is Dr. Piper at Martinville Westwood, and he basically says what you say. He doesn't want to dumb down his faculty by handing them the Common Core things. Now, here are some statements that are true. First off, in the 60s, I'm a science major and a double major in social studies. When I was taught to teach, the term for write and think was called the inquiry method. This is just a complete circle of the inquiry method. I have taught U.S. government in Oklahoma high school. The United States has a Republican form of government, which this guy just said. That doesn't mean Republican Party. That means a Republican form of government. That is a fact. The term constitutional democracy is bogus. That's the first time I've really heard it. And here it is in these documents pushing this. Nowhere in the U.S. Constitution does education appear. What's not included is supposed to be left where, sir? To the states. Okay, here's the big kicker in this. And we've got people now in high levels using oppressive tactics on us. Business and industry used to say, you teach them to think and educate them, and we will train them. This whole plan is big money. Now business and industry want to use education money that's been going to educate for years, and they want us to do the training and therefore save them the money of doing the training. Now, I have been passing out for years, and I started to have it sent down. But I have a 1937 Tulsa World article where the OU president of the OU Board of Regents said in 1937 that students could not do college work, and that the universities didn't want to teach 0-hour courses. Higher ed has been putting the rap on high schools and common schools for 76 years, and they're still doing it year after year. In fact, was it Stand for Children or Stand for America that you said? You know, it's a term.
Stand on children. Stand for children.
Stand for children. They have sent a person into our state who goes around right now, appears at studies in the Capitol, appears at the state board meetings, who says we've got to quit teaching 0-hour courses and things such as that. This is a put-up, folks. When you really study what's going on, the whole thing about this is a sham.
So
you're trying to ram down our throats all over.
So
and
you're in
educated
support of
person,
0-hour courses?
I am also a
Dr.
PhD
Aaron?
researcher, and I have to be right, because if I'm not right, people like Joel Robison get up here and run a sham over things. And I will tell you, I researched this, so that's the fact.
Joel?
Hang on.
Well, I was just going to make. Well, I hope he saves something for his remarks to come later. Many things Dr. Harris said I would challenge, but one of the ones that I want to point out is 0-hour courses. Students who leave our high schools before they go into college have to enroll in 0-hour courses. They don't get any credit, but it still costs their parents or them the money for those courses. And that is a large segment of our student population. My argument is, is that at the end of the day, we need to be sending students out of our high schools, that when they walk across the stage and get that diploma, that it's a meaningful diploma, that they are prepared to go do whatever it is they want to do. If they want to go get a job, they're ready. If they want to go to career tech, they're ready. If they want to go to community college, ready. Universities, ready. We want to give students the ability to make whatever, have all the options available to them. We don't want to lock children into a particular path due to their lack of education they received at the high school level or the K-12 level.
And what Mr. Robison said is absolutely true. And I'm a superintendent of school, and I do these children every single day. But what I also want to say is that is never going to happen with Common Core, because there is no parallel between what we get to teach those children at the high school level and the college entrance exam of the ACT. If we were able to teach the ACT, the remediation rate in this state would drop dramatically. We would have children that were ready. If we were able to teach the tests that colleges want to see for entrance. We teach 7 tests right now that mean absolutely nothing to not one college or university. They want to know what they do on the ACT. So, you're absolutely right. We are charged with getting children across the state who can go out and not just have a job for minimum wage and support a family, but we are tied, our hands are tied with what we are being told we have to do by the state of Oklahoma or the national standards or whatever you say, because I am one of those education folks who is not saying Common Core will happen. And Mr. Robison said that we're hearing a lot of positive from schools. I would love to hear that too, because I'm not hearing anything.
So is that why they're talking about changing the ACT?
Well, no, actually, that's the fun part, is that David Coleman, who we just talked about, you know, who was with Student Achievement Partners, who created the standards, has now moved on to the College Board. And since he was the one who wrote the standards and he's all in on the standards, he's going to go change the SAT to align with the Common Core state standards. So another way that that's going to affect homeschool students too, by the way, is that some homeschool students, not all homeschool students, but a good chunk of homeschool students have their kids take either the ACT or the SAT because they know that that's, you know, looked at by colleges for entrance. So what ends up happening then, if you're like me, who is who's interested in the classical model of education. So I'm not teaching the Common Core and some of the things that I've read and what the skill sets are for the standards. So I'm not teaching those, and then my kid goes to take the SAT because unfortunately the ACT is now talking about aligning with the Common Core state standards. So then what happens to my kid? How well do they do actually on the entrance exam? And I do want to piggyback on something that Donna said. Dr. Sandra Stotsky, who is from Massachusetts and actually was the writer of the Massachusetts standards, educational standards, she wrote them. And for those of you who are not who are uneducated in the silly nuances of education reform, Dr. Stotsky wrote Massachusetts standards that were lauded for years and years as being the best standards in all of the United States. I mean, people actually went to Massachusetts to find out what they were doing to use them for themselves. And Dr. Stotsky says exactly what Donna just said, is that basically nobody ever asked colleges, what do you want? So you want them to be college and career ready, but you're not going to ask colleges what they need to have to come into the, so we're just going to pick something and throw spaghetti against a wall and go, well, maybe it's that. So I really see her point, and Dr. Stotsky was, I mean, you explained it beautifully. And Dr. Stotsky just explained it recently to an interim study to legislators there, that exact same thing. So yeah, that is a real problem.
I'd like to jump in real quick. 4 out of 7 end of instruction tests that the students currently take in Oklahoma were never meant to be a college entrance exam. That was not the point of those exams. It was a part of Governor Henry's Achieving Classroom Excellence, ACE Act, and what those tests are supposed to demonstrate is whether or not the students have learned what they were supposed to learn in the courses that they took. So if they take an Algebra 1 class, they go take an end of instruction Algebra 1 test. They should be able to pass the Algebra 1 EOI. That's what the point of those tests were. It was never to create a new college prep test or anything like that. All those tests were intended to do was to give a warranty to the citizens, to their parents, that yes, they took Algebra 1, they know Algebra 1.
So I think what I heard her say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that guidance is supposed to be tested.
Right.
No,
You
I'm
could
saying
not
that if
teach
we're
the
going to be
test.
held to remediation rates as educators, and we're always going to have that thrown at us, then let me teach what's going to fix the remediation rate. Don't ask me to teach 7 tests that are just hey, you passed the class because you just because you passed
So
the class.
forgive my ignorance, I haven't had a child in school in many years, and I'm trying to keep things
This is
clear.
complicated stuff.
I can
Because
do it,
you're in support of national standards, and state standards that are nationalized.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you and all the other
Sure.
states, but you do support state standards,
Yes.
just not these national states.
The national state Oklahoma standards, that's
And-
right, no, I don't.
But then I hear you saying that you're bombarded with both, and you do, just like local control.
Yes, and the thing that I will say too about Oklahoma's ACT school is we are 0.4% away from being at the national average in Oklahoma. Our school, where we are, for the past 5 years, has shown growth for 5 years in a row in the ACT. So when the standards that we're being assessed by now come back and tell my children that they are failing because of either a test score being raised or after the test has been taken, I have to go back to my community and I have to say, look at what we are doing on a national test. We are growing over 5 years. We are close to the national average, and our kids are getting better and better every year at those test approaches. So what you can talk about all the state standards and national standards, but the reality is at the school level, children need to be able to get out of school, be able to get into college without taking remediation classes. And to do that, we need to be able to teach to a test that does. Instead of 7 tests just because you took the test, just because you took the class, now you take a test and you pass.
What we need to do is, because they close here at 7:30, we can take us out promptly, so we'll do a quick 5 minutes for each. I think we only have 2 candidates here tonight. The others have been answered.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I heard you guys talk for over an hour. I'm a parent. I'm sure what you're saying is important. My daughter is special ed. She has state testing that she has to take. She had a specialized state test. When she went and took that specialized state test, she got an advanced on it. Next year she'll take another one, all on her own, with no help. Why?
There will be accommodations given to meet her special needs. There are accommodations provided.
But not the accommodations that we had last year.
That is not the accommodation.
Well, the
that
test will not
special
be, I have to have a sheet here, I'll give you.
What we think is what they will be. She's just saying her child is not.
No, I understand.
A
No, I
test
understand.
that
It's a little bit, and I really don't want to
appropriate for her
necessarily,
level.
I understand. I just don't really know if this is a good public forum for us to get into the
Say
nuances
the
of what
children aren't getting
your
what they need.
child's
That's not the right
issues may
way.
be. I'll be happy to talk to you after the meeting, give you the information I have. But what I want everybody to know is that special education students aren't going to be taking the same test in the same manner that other students take. They'll be allowed some modifications or some accommodations to help them meet their individual needs.
So there will be, because I was
Yes.
told that there weren't going to be
Yeah, there will be.
near the modifications that she got.
It should be for time. If she's hearing impaired, she'll have a hearing assistant. If she's visually impaired, she'll have something to help her with that. If she cannot physically touch the keyboard, she'll be able to have something with that. Now, anything else as far as lessons, test questions, answers, or larger print, or any of those things will not be accommodated for her.
I don't
So if
necessarily
she-
know if that's accurate.
It is accurate. That's what I do every day. I'm a superintendent.
Well, I understand that, I'm just saying.
I want you guys to remember
I
that
get
there
you.
are special
No,
ed
I
kids.
get you.
And last year, we did so well. Last year, the test came back nice. The kids got to look at it and say, you know what, maybe I am smart. And next year, that's not gonna happen. And I'm gonna have to explain to my fourth grader that this test means nothing, and know that that's not true. She may get held back. It doesn't.
Our goal is for your child to be just as successful next year as she was this year.
If each of you just take 5 minutes, and I hold you to it, then we'll have 5 minutes to meet and talk.
Can I mention something?
3 minutes to get that, we're good.
Can I mention something really fast? We have some handouts and we also have videos as well, so if you'd like to stay after briefly, we can help you with those.
Let's give them a round of applause.
I'll take one.
Okay.
Joel, Mr. Eyes, I've never seen this guy before.
Oh, you know, we've had some pretty heated discussion, and I just want to say that, you know, it's very easy for people to make rules and for people to make decisions if you've never been in a classroom in your entire life. Don't tell me how to do my job when I have been a public school person for 20 years, married to a man who's been a public school person for 25. Common Core is not going to be the savior of our schools. We had past standards. So we take a NAEP test and we say, on the NAEP test, nationally our kids don't do as well. Well, that's a very nice blanket statement. NAEP tests are given to 8th grade students, selected by randomly, and they're told from the very beginning, and we're told, you will never see these test scores. Don't worry about it. Okay, so you tell me an 8th grader who has just been told, you're never going to see this score, don't worry about it, is going to perform at the fantastic superhuman level that we need them to perform at? Absolutely not. So when we go from, okay, well, we're not doing well on this NAEP test, so now we need to go to Common Core. I'm sorry. I'm just like Jack with some of my ideas. It's about money. It's about testing companies. It's about textbooks. It's about people who want to control the education system, and they'll make the money. It has nothing to do with children. I'm Donnie Anderson, by the way, running for state superintendent. I am a superintendent, that's what I do every day, and that's why I'm running. There were several comments made, and I just made some notes, and I'll stay very within my 5 minutes. I think I'll just use it by spill off my skin. I do support the ACT as our exit exam for kids, because I see what happens to my teachers, because we are under the ACE initiative to get them college ready, and the 7 tests that we give are part of the ACE initiative. But then what we do is we spin our wheels when we talk about remediation rates. Let us teach the ACT, and we will be able to make that much less. Common Core is developmentally not okay, especially for K through 3 kids. The front part of their brain is not developed to the point to be able to answer questions that they're being asked. And I do want to just note that textbook companies, this has been so fast and so furious, that textbook companies have taken these standards and they have done whatever they wanted to do, stamped Common Core on it and sent it out to us.
Kind of like Obama.
Well, a little bit, not that I'm in the healthcare system, so I don't know. So your standards are not going to be, your textbook companies are doing what they would like to do with the standards. There's no pilot year. Anybody needs a year to see what's going to happen, what's going to be better, what do we need to do differently. The staff development on this is not common. Every school has basically had to jump in there and fight and figure out, and 3 street coaches will come into my school and we know a whole lot more than they do about what's going on. So I just want to end, I'm going to read really quickly one thing that I came across today as I was reading and my research for this, and I'm going to read it to you real quick. This is a question for Common Core Mathematics in 8th grade level. And I usually read a 2nd grade question that has to do with about 7 different colored lunch boxes. And at the end of the week, what color lunchbox did Maria bring? And my kids just look at me and say, why does she have so many lunch boxes? We're not allowed to bring our lunch because the federal guidelines say that's not okay. And what do you mean she's got a lunch box? So anyway, this is an 8th grade test. Using your transparency, show that under a sequence of any 2 translations and translations along different vectors, that the sequence of the translation followed by the translation is equal to the translation along the first vector, followed by a translation along the second vector, places the figure in the same location as when you perform the translations in the reverse order. The fact will be proven in high school. That's a little parenthesis. Oh, by the way, this will be proven to you in high school. Label the transformed image A. Now draw 2 new vectors and translate along them just as before. This time label the transformed image A. Compare your work with a partner. Was the statement that the sequence of the transformed image A compare your work with a translation followed by the translation is equal to the sequence of the translation followed by the translation true in all cases. Do you think it will always be true?
I didn't understand any of that.
Okay. That was worked out by some college university people to be able to see if they could work it out. That is what we're asking our 8th graders to do. If you think that our 8th graders are developmentally ready to do that, they are absolutely not. This is the question they ask them, and then on an 8 test they say, don't worry about it, you're never going to see your score.
Thank you,
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jack Heron, and I am a professional Oklahoma educator. And I've done other things. I've been on the board of directors of the bank. I've been in the cattle business. I've been in the oil business. And as a teacher, the pay is so great that sometimes we have to do other things to try to make a living. I would agree totally with Donna. This is really developmental. And everywhere I go out, I've mentioned my grandson. I've got to start off with him again tonight because we're advancing. Donna's family's heard this and heard this, but my grandson started the kindergarten about 6 weeks ago. School started on Friday night. Monday night he had homework. My daughter called me and called my wife and said, Trevor won't do his homework. And this is humorous because Trevor said, Mama, it hurts my brain. But then we advanced. We advanced to, he called me on the way to a meeting one night and he said, Chip, give my homework. A is for apple. And he said, I can sign my name. Well, now we're down to B is for bat. And who was it done the research on bats? Was it you that's done research on bats? Well, we caught a bat in the swimming pool skimmer. And he put it in alcohol, took it to school. He's so proud of himself. But the bottom line, this is about developmental. And when I was a high school principal, there were a lot of students that just were not progressing in school. And I could call the Army recruiter and say, Sarge, I've got a young man down here that a little time with you would really help him, and the Army would come after him. But what do you have to have today to get into the Army? Donna, what do you have to have? You have to have a high school diploma. And the other thing that really, yes ma'am, the other thing that really stuck with me was one day a man called me He says, Mr. Terry, can I talk to you? He said, my wife's in the hospital, she's got cancer. He said, I've got 5 kids at home. He said, the problem is that senior English teacher you got up there. She keeps telling my son that she's going to get him ready to go to college. And Mr. Herron, he doesn't want to go to college, he just wants to graduate and go to the Army. So here you've got these situations, we're taking all the options away, and I think it's unrealistic to think that we're going to send every kid to college. At the same time, we've got the greatest career tech system in the state. Now, for years I would go out, and I've been the president of a Chamber of Commerce. I just didn't know what else to bring. I brought you my bio there. And I would go out to these Chamber of Commerce meetings, and I would hear the business people say, well, boy, you're just not turning out much up there at school. These kids can't do anything when they get us in a job. And I would go back to school and talk to the students. And the students said, Dr. Herron, they won't pay us what we're worth. They won't look at our transcripts, and if we're making good grades and hire us, they want to hire the people as low as they can. And they said for a lot of cases, they're hiring dropouts or kids that aren't trained to do anything. So again, I'm here to talk to you about my candidacy, but those are things that we're dealing with in school. That's the reality, and we're dealing with so much. Right now in Oklahoma, there is turmoil. And kids are stressed, parents are stressed, students are stressed, administrators are stressed. Had a kindergarten teacher tell me just yesterday, we spent 8 or 9 weeks assessing here at the first of school. I have 1 week to teach the material, and I'm going to be evaluated on the material. My daughter works in the schools. She was so happy last week that she was sick for 3 days because she's a paraprofessional, and her teacher was so upset and uptight because she was going to be observed for the first time. We've got an observation system that's going on in Oklahoma that for some reason, if we do this TLE, they call it, this evaluation is supposed to make you a better teacher. I'm just telling you that's baloney. But what we need to do is let the teachers know what they need to do and give them direction. The teachers are prepared. Oklahoma, I was a certification officer at OU in the 70s, the #1 certification program in the United States. And so the teachers are trained. We've got great teachers. They just need a chance. And the oppressive policies that we're dealing with are driving the whole state wild. So if you look there, my plan, I said this, my 3-part plan for education, teacher pay raise. And I think that I'm best qualified to do this because, like it or not, I did spend 10 months in the State Department of Education as an Assistant State Superintendent for Finance. I helped and had a part in preparing 2 different budgets that went to the legislature. And the thing is, I know where the streams of revenue are. There is a learning curve when you go in there. And if you know where you are when you start, then you don't have to do the learning curve. Second, local control for school districts. I don't mean local control that we just let them do what they want to do. Local control, if you're going to run for a school board, then you are given the charge of running that school, and you need to be allowed to do that. So local control is that. And third place, and this is my idea, I established a program at Southern Tech here in Ardmore, and I established 19 of them all over the state, where we teach college-level calculus and physics. I know what high standards are. These Common Core standards are minimum. Oklahoma needs to teach beyond the Common Core standards, and we need to teach the high-level stuff. I have a great teacher out here. I had a great teacher, Lori McCown from over at Dixon. We've got a physics teacher. I've got about 200 grads in this area. And so what the math teachers in Oklahoma, the best ones, have told me is we need to have math specialists down at the K-8 level, and I don't mean working strictly in title programs. We need to have them down there working right side by side with the reading specialists to improve the math programs across Oklahoma. And that's what I plan to do. I know where the revenue streams are, where we can fund this, and if we can put the math specialists in there in 3 years, we'll improve the math scores. Thank you. Go to HerronForOklahoma.com, and good to see all of you.
Right here, what church is that? And so we just went over to the park.
Jenna?
You don't have to read. He's the one that attends Jen Chambers.
Painting, I was
Right.
pleasure. Always a pleasure.
This year we got three more.
Well, I was gonna say, I was going to, I need to go back and get a better answer. I haven't seen that one before, so I need to get a better answer. Oh, no, I'm not denying. No, I don't think I've been. I disagree with you.
We can carry our conversation on.
But I walked into voluntarily.
Yes. Oh, pictures.
I think I never debate whether or not athletes well, that's good that everybody was saying, included in social studies and science was also common core. But I don't think it is. I would argue with you that yes, I understand. But I mean, I watched the social studies thing happen,
Thank you for your work and putting all this together. I really thank you.
They're actually having a meeting. I'll see you on the road, I'm sure we'll. Well, no, I was just saying, at some point, I noticed, I will be back, and I'll call from you.